Good evening. Today is a very special day here on A Better Chance for Youth. Let's talk about it. We honestly actually have several guests here. They're in the backstage. I am going to bring them on, but I am going to tell you this is a very different discussion than normal. For the next couple discussions will probably be very unique. I have some educators on here from various areas of the city or even out of state. We're here to discuss some issues that are going on in education that may be via the news, maybe just our own personal experiences. So as I bring them on, they will probably tell you about themselves. And then once everybody is on, we'll probably just dive right into the discussion because our pre-discussion, we almost forgot to go live. But I am so glad that they are here today. We have Ms. Dolores. We have Ms. Shaw, our Director of Education at A Better Chance for Youth, Futures Incorporated. And we have, Mr. HBCU himself, Vince Elliott, a wealth of knowledge, especially in the realm of education. So as mentioned prior to everyone coming on today, just in the intro, I had to be honest with everybody. Like, look, this is totally not the normal script that we talk, but we are talking about education issues. I did give articles, but even with the articles, I'll put them in the chat and we can just use them if people want to know what we're talking about. But let's just jump in. And like, who wants to go first and talk about the issue that's bothering them with education?
I guess I'll start. So a little bit about my background. I've taught I've been in the classroom for 8 years. I recently left this year. Just some differences with my district because of the whole pandemic, teaching virtually. But I taught high school English for 8 years, 10th grade. And as I'm also history certified, and as an English teacher, I often considered myself somewhat of a history teacher in that when you're teaching literature, you have to give historical context and you have to provide students with background. And they're going to be influenced based on the text that you introduce them to in class. And I think the voices that we give voice to in the classroom also show where our, not just our personal values lie, but they show where what's worth looking at. And so I often brought in, BIPOC authors. I pretty much only read people of color for the most part, or indigenous authors. And I got a lot of pushback every year that I was in the classroom. Got pushback from parents, got pushback from administration, but I never gave up because I feel like these are the voices that are not heard. And, for students of color, they need to see that there are people in their communities that have something to contribute, something to say. And it's just as important as, the accepted canon of white authors. And so the recent law that was passed here in the state of Texas about critical race theory basically being banned from history classrooms across the state, it really just, it upset me so much because even just as an English teacher, so much of what I taught not just had to do with race or racism, but how we're all affected by our country's history. And the only way that we can improve as a country is to look where we came from and to recognize, the grievances and the mistakes that we've made as a country. And I never tried to make any student feel guilty or out of place or uncomfortable, but part of learning is being uncomfortable and allowing yourself to sit with that uncomfortability. And so hearing that the state of Texas is pretty much taking that out of the history classroom, it was upsetting to see that they're moving in the wrong direction to further whitewash history that's already pretty much whitewashed as it is. So.
Oh, wow. Well, that was a great way to kick us off. Anybody else have any thoughts of what she said? I know I used to teach history, and it didn't matter where I was. I could be in Detroit, Michigan teaching it, or I could be in Dayton, Ohio teaching it, or I could be in the backwoods. No, seriously, this is serious. I could be in Mississippi teaching it to all white kids. You still was gonna learn Black history. I mean, that was just me. But I totally don't agree. You know, like I'm like you when you had told me and expressed your interest in that topic of that article where they talked about what they were planning to do with history. I was like, how can you do that? You know, that's just not going to help at all. So what is anybody else's thoughts on that one? You can see Mr. Elliott's face, so I know he has something.
So I was going to say that I've been a teacher and a parent simultaneously for the last 18 years. So I feel like every educational issue I take home with me because I still have children that are in the school system. And I'm listening to her talk and I'm thinking, okay, without that law being passed, my son has come home and said, he just felt different. He didn't feel validated. He didn't feel like anyone really got him. And I'm thinking, so how much more when we stop teaching the history? Like I said, we can't, cherry pick, what part we want to teach. If we're going to uphold, our values and what we say, then we need to make sure that this information is accessible to all of us. Because like she said, like Miss Dolores said, that our nation is a combination of all the people that are a part of it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Mr. Elliott?
Well, whites had always been comfortable with lies, plain and simple. Now, am I supposed to introduce myself first, or are we supposed to
go? You good.
All right.
You can introduce yourself and tell them if you want to.
I just feel like if you don't like what's going on in the schools, if we collectively pull our kids out and just start doing community-based schooling, we don't necessarily have to have that fight.
But how many parents do you think will actually follow through and do that? I mean, and I'm not trying to be like a rebel rouser here. I'm just saying I've been in education since 2000. I've seen a lot.
So the choices is miseducation or no education.
Facts.
Which one is worse?
Facts. Miseducation to me is worse because an idle mind and a person that doesn't know anything can be dangerous. But to me, again,
someone who thinks they know is even more dangerous.
That's true. I agree with that one too. But like we were talking prior to going live, I know that even before you had came on, Dolores and Tennille, they were talking about the respect of name. And then they also went further to say, why do you feel comfortable yelling in the face of our Black and brown babies when they're at school? And you're not going to get the response. You're not going to get the response. And I didn't put my own self in this equation because I was just that child. You yell in my face, I'm going to yell at you back. And, I just take the whooping. Respect to me was just one of those things. And even to go further where you're saying the child's name and you purposely saying that child's name wrong is going to irritate them and that's going to cause them to shut down too, which go on in many of our schools. Mm-hmm. I know you're not in the area of Texas, but you're in Pennsylvania, so I know you see it. And then even the dynamics, as you were telling us, are different. So I don't know. Like you're like, oh God, that's
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Karens had took over the school system, plain and simple.
Oh wow.
We have school systems with 80% of a Black student population, no Black teachers, one Black counselors that refuse to promote historically Black colleges and university, and then have nerve to call herself the president of that area, NAACP.
Wow.
And then you have those administrators, those same administrators that's telling the only Black people in that school which is the security guards and the cafeteria workers, do not talk to the kids.
Mm. Wow.
And then in one school, they have here, there was a white guy teaching African American history, and then on the textbooks that they chose, had people picking cotton. And to them, that was okay. This is Pennsylvania, mind you.
And just
And
to
I'm sure
ask,
that y'all don't
this
see
is
this in
current?
Texas.
This is current?
Last year. I'm sorry, the year before last.
Oh, wow. Sorry to hear that.
Before I left the classroom, I was actually, my school that I was at had just approved an African American Studies class for the first time. And, I naturally was like, okay, well, I don't know who you're going to ask to teach this, but I'm going to go ahead and volunteer because I don't see y'all finding anybody else to teach it. And so I promoted the program and was able to get kids to sign up. And I immediately asked, are you going to give me the freedom in terms of choosing the text that I need to choose? And I was like, I'm going to teach as many sides of every issue as I can. But the focus of an African American Studies class is to promote and educate about that culture and about our history. And so, I was told immediately, yes, you'll have the freedom to do that. But with this new law that got passed, and African American Studies is considered a social studies class. So with this new law that got passed, I don't know how any sort of class like that or Mexican American Studies is going to implement an accurate curriculum, something that is, speaks true to the history and the culture of the people, and wants to teach the students the truth about how things are, or about the way things have been historically and how that got us to where we are today. I don't know how any of that's going to happen with this new law that's being passed in Texas. So, I hate to say that I left the classroom when I did, but I don't see, I wasn't going to be able to whitewash it in the way that they wanted it to be done. It increases the disparity that we see between the races already. There's an achievement gap, there's a privilege gap. And when kids don't see themselves represented in the classroom or in places of importance, it limits what they can see themselves achieving. And so that's my huge problem with it. It doesn't surprise me. We're in Texas, I wish that I could say, we were somewhere else more progressive, but we're in Texas and they want to control the curriculum. The majority of our legislators in the state are white, older white males for the most part. And they don't want the idea that our country and almost everything that we stand for, all of our institutions, all of our government institutions have been built and founded on racism. They don't want that idea being passed down to the kids. They don't want that even slightly being communicated. Really, and anybody who knows anything about history, you don't need to know very much to know that that's true. That's the truth. They're just trying to hide the truth from kids. So.
I have a question, and they put that in law. So what is the consequences of actually breaking that law?
That's a really good, as from what I read because I had only read one article about it before reading the one that that Monique pushed out. I believe they said, they were going to be able to I don't know about press charges against teachers, but they were going to try to remove them from the classroom. They're going to try to take away their certifications. Basically what they would do for any other reason that you broke the code of conduct or anything like that. So, yeah.
See, I will make them have to enforce that law. If I was an educator in Texas, you're going to have to enforce that law. And let's see how far we could take this. Because I sit in the smoking section and I want all that smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
What blows my mind is that things keep getting passed down. Education is highly politicized, and it's not about the kids; it's about all these other agendas. And my thing about it is, then they'll be like, "Well, there's a gap between our black and brown babies versus the white babies." I'm like, "Well, all the curriculum you give them validates one group of people, lifts up one group of people, and if you don't bring in things that lift them up, they're not going to be engaged, because who wants to hear about how everybody else is great and you're trash? Nobody wants to hear that." Mm-hmm. So my thing, and I'm not trying, but I'm like, you want to engage the kids, give them something they can relate to. You want to fill in the achievement gaps, because we don't have intelligent gaps. Our babies are very intelligent. I said a lot of our babies are disengaged because the curriculum put before them. And she said that I'm the director of education programs. Curriculum is my passion. And I'm like, if you don't have the curriculum that uplifts kids and shows them a plethora, what are we really trying to teach our kids? Okay? Because a lot of people make the argument that, well, I'm not a racist. That happened years and years ago. But if you are only validating one group of people, you are implicitly racist, because you are not you're not giving the perspective of multiple groups of people.
That's where curriculum violence comes in. I feel like, this is a term I didn't even really know about until I think, a year ago. I subscribed to this publication called Teaching Tolerance. That's all about social justice and incorporating social justice standards into the education system, and teaching, social justice alongside the content. And this term curriculum violence, when I first heard it, I was like, wow, that's very powerful. Lessons like, for instance, white teachers have elementary school kids, they bring samples of like cotton to school so the kids can look through them and experience what it's like, because this is how they were going to introduce slavery or something like that. That is an example of curriculum violence, in that it does more trauma to kids of color than it does help them or uplift them. And all that comes from ignorance. The teachers that do this think that they're doing what's best for those kids. They don't realize that what they're doing is traumatizing them or re-traumatizing them. It's humiliating, it's degrading. And that's where the curriculum violence comes from, is it comes from this ignorance, this legacy of ignorance that we allow to continue to get passed down, and that we're even encouraging now. And like you said, Mr. Elliott, when that's what happens when you have white teachers, predominantly white teachers, working with students of color. Mm-hmm. It's inevitable.
Well, I have a question, and this is to everybody. I know in my area, my first teachers, of course, are my mom and dad. But at what age did you have your first African American teacher? Because I had them all through school, and they was tough on me. That's probably why I'm tough now. But what age?
I had them all through school as well, and I think that is one of the reasons why they have changed the certification here in the state of Pennsylvania, where it's more difficult for people of color to obtain certifications to teach here. And I even went as far as get the president of Alabama State University to try to create a pipeline from Alabama State to Pittsburgh Public Schools. But quite naturally, that ended with a meeting. And he flew all the way up here to try to put this in place. Now, we all know if you want Black teachers, where to find them. Historically, Black colleges' foundation, even before they were colleges or universities, they were teachers' college, every last one of them.
That's true.
So that is our foundation. But if you want to control a population of people, the best way to do it is to keep them ignorant.
Yep. I was in third grade, by the way. That was my first Black teacher.
Okay.
Me too, third grade. But like I said, my parents grew up in Greensboro. Like, they always kept, the history in front of us. They always made sure that we knew, we knew the background, we knew where we came from. And I'm saying that because we traveled a lot. My dad was military, so we were often not just in an area that didn't have a lot of anything. We were often the one token in the classroom. So, that was, a thing that we had to deal with a lot just growing up. But one thing that I thought about when Ms. Monique was posing her question is I get really nervous when people say they don't like history. I'm like, you just turn me off. Like, you don't like history. But one thing that we've talked about before is that a lot of institutions are implementing a diversity committee. And I don't know how many times I hear people talk about that, and it feels like the person that's in charge of that committee has the least understanding of what the purpose of this is. I'm like, I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but it's like they just don't understand why we need to teach, why we need diversity committee, why we need to teach Black history, why we need Black history programs, why we need to celebrate Black History Month. But no, the people still don't know. They know 3 famous Black people, and then that's it. We have to teach them, because if we don't teach them, who's going to tell them?
Black history is King stood up, Rosa sat down, and we all overcame. The end.
And when I taught social studies, you could not, like, the kids would be so mad at me. You could not do the famous 5. You had to go dig deep and find somebody. Even when I did the wax museum, the Living Wax Museum, you had to go dig deep. And what I think the problem with education is, for me, is people aren't ready to think out the box. You want to get the same and continue doing the same, and that's why you continue getting the same results.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's my 2 cents.
Exactly. I mean, no, it's 100% the truth. I mean, when I taught practical writing, it was a remedial class for the kids who didn't pass their STAR test. And I used that, but I was able to teach whatever I wanted, as long as it was focusing on reading and writing. And so naturally, I did a whole unit, connecting Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin and to all the more.
Wow, I would have loved to be in that class.
we read about Claudette Colvin, and we read about Bayard Rustin, and like people that are never talked about, that have been pretty much written out of history just because, they didn't like that Bayard Rustin was openly gay. But he's the guy that taught Martin Luther King about nonviolence, but he's completely written out of history. And so I just, I don't know. I did the best I could. And I worry now because I'm not there. And I'm like, who's going to pick up that torch? I don't know what's going to happen. But it's happening all across the country, more and more. It's really, and I hate to say it, because critical race theory should not be a theory. First of all, the idea that a whole group of people, Black people, are still affected today by the repercussions of slavery, that's not a theory. That's a fact. Like, how can you say that how can you say that that's a theory, first of all? Second of all, how could you not recognize that? Like, we're still trying to be kept ignorant about our own history. And one thing I often told my students, so that I always told them, is Black history is American history. It's not separate. It is a part of American history. It's an integral part of American history. And we got to stop looking at it like it's a separate thing. It's not. Black people built this country, just like a lot of Hispanic people built this country. So, I don't know.
No, you have all of you have made.
In the city of Pittsburgh, they did a study.
Oh, wow.
This is the worst city for African Americans to live in. I mean,
wow.
Just think about that for a moment. They did a study that this is the worst city for African Americans to live in. If they live anywhere else, their life expectancy will go up. Their economic situation will increase. This is a city that a lot of folks don't even know where the second historically Black college and university was founded at in 1849, Avery College. There's a historical plaque on East Ohio Street, but it's never mentioned. It's also the first institution of higher learning that had a Black president. Wow. It will never be mentioned. And they say this is the most livable city. But for who?
Yeah.
Definitely is
Well,
possible. Beta, Mississippi. Beta, Mississippi is located.
somebody has some feedback coming.
That is the location of Mississippi Valley.
Mississippi
Beta
Valley
is the most deepest south that I can think of right now.
in the Delta.
Blacks live better in Yazoo, Mississippi, Beta, Mississippi, and Woolly Coochie, Georgia, than people do here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And it's done by design.
Well,
Now, they want to say, but we elected a black mayor. First black mayor that's going to be elected in 2021.
Interesting. Well, we do have another guest, so you don't feel like you're in a pool of women, and we are going to bring
That's
him.
where I'd rather be. Don't
Okay.
oh, there he goes.
Welcome to the stage, Mr. Anthony H. Brown. We are talking about education. I don't know whose feedback. I don't think it's mine, but somebody's feedback is coming. But what we have been talking about is educational issues, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's not having enough African American presence. And here in Texas, if you haven't heard about the new law that I don't know if it has passed yet or if it's going to pass, where they're trying to control how you teach about slavery.
It has passed.
Okay, so it has passed. That might be why I don't want to teach social studies, because if I can't talk about my stuff, I'm not going.
So I heard one on one of the feedbacks, one of the things I was looking up while we were preparing for this. One of the parents said, well, we don't want our kids, our white kids, to be shamed. We don't want them to be ashamed to be white. And my pushback with that would be, well, why is it okay to only teach African American children that their ancestors were slaves and were not treated well, and not give them the full picture of the history? Why is that okay? Why is that okay? And they're saying that they're opposing the bill because they don't want their white children to be shamed. But what about what our black and brown babies deal with every day?
Exactly.
Wow, that's heavy. That is heavy. Hey, everybody. I just wanted to jump in here real quick and just say hello. Hey, how's it going? All right. So, listen. I was multitasking. So first of all, I was multitasking because I was just leaving a meeting talking about some of the very things that you all are talking about today. So I'm here in Cleveland, Ohio, and in my first life, my first job is an educator. So I've been educating for over 20 some odd years in the public. I've done charter school for some years, but mostly public education. And we were just talking about the whole idea of what we can be doing or what is happening in our community, that education is not the glamorous job. You know, people are not falling in or really just running towards education like other fields, but then teachers are the first people you kind of meet. Those are the ones you cling to. Those are the ones who you connect with. Those are the ones who inspire you. Those are the ones who motivate you. Those are the ones who had to sometimes raise you. But why isn't our young people even thinking about and considering education as a viable career? So then the question became about, as Black men, what are we doing, or what can we do to impact and support our young people, especially our young men of color, to hopefully have them consider going into the field of education? So the thing is, right now we realize and we recognize the fact that we are competing against the streets. We're competing against, other elements in society. We are competing against, in some cases, death, because we find that our young people are dying for whatever reason. They're dying. They're being incarcerated. They're being told that they're less than. And so we are really trying to, confront that and really talk about strategies of what we can be doing in our community, and maybe it'll flourish into other organizations. Like we've been working with a company called The Profound Gentleman, which is a male mentoring program. We've been working with Real Men Teach, which with Curtis Valentine, who's a Morehouse man, really trying to educate and really maybe try how can we impact our this next generation of leaders to be productive community citizens and be able to come back into the building. I was so amazed because I'm working a summer program this summer with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and we were working with some young people today, and a sixth grader sat there and said, well, we asked him, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, you know what? I want to be a mentor like these Black men are around this room, because I want to be able to impact and be able to help make a difference in our community and be able to reach lives. I mean, and that right there, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go home. I was done. My job is done for the day. When I heard him say that, I was done. Like, I need more people like him. Where is he at? I need him on the brochure. I need him on the brochure. I need him in the soundbite. I need him in the commercial. I need him on everything. Because he said he wants to help make a difference. I think that was so impactful. But I think, so I've been hearing what you all been saying about or talking about the fact that, so the conversation became, I think you all said something about what was the influence of that first male teacher, or maybe that first Black teacher you all had. So let me just jump in and talk about mine real quick. Oh my God. So mine, his name was Mr. Patillo, 4th grade. OMG, this man, right? First of all the girls thought he was Billy D. Williams. All the girls were swooning after him. All the guys wanted to be like us. He was cool. He drove a mint green Riviera. Y'all know about them Rivieras back here. Maybe Vince did. But everybody else, y'all know about them Rivieras.
With the torpedo back.
Mr. Patillo used to ride up in that thing, and I swear he was the coldest teacher we had. And I was like, he was so impactful as far as just, he connected with us. He took time. He really just wanted to listen. He really was like, I'm here for you. And I was like, that was 4th grade. He was my first male teacher. And ever since then, I was like, do I want to do this when I grow up? I don't know. I ran away from it for a long time until finally I ended up coming back to it. And now I got young people telling me, like, Mr. Brown, it was because of you that I'm doing this now. Matter of fact, I ran into one of my students now who actually teaches at my junior high school. And she's like, Mr. Brown, I'm only doing this because you did it for me. I was like, wow, go figure. So we do a lot, and I think we just need some more people to really help. And I even need moms and dads, because I always tell mamas real quick, hey, you were the first teacher, so help us help your young person, and let's let them know that they can be influential. Even if you're not in the classroom teaching, being an educator means more than just being in the classroom. You're that Sunday school teacher, that mentor, that coach, that advisor. Anything where you're doing and you're impacting and you're, Vince over here helping young people to get to and through the college.
Yes.
And he's able to pick up the phone and be like, hold on. Oh, you want to go to Bethune-Cookman instead of going to Alabama State? Even though I don't want to make this phone call, I'm going to make this phone call.
He does.
And that was a hurt piece too, because that was my first cousin's son that I had to make that phone call for.
Look at that. See, I knew I could get a ride out of him real quick, because you got no what to say.
No, he's been on it, because when we start talking,
you ain't got to show all that in the background. We see the Hornet. I forgot, this ain't my show. I got to be quiet.
No, you don't. You don't have to be quiet, but you do need to answer the question of, when did you have your first male teacher or your first teacher of color?
Well, that was it. That was Mr. Patillo. I just talked about that. That was it. That was my 4th grade.
Just making sure. And then we also discussed, I'm just trying to catch you up. We also discussed the law that passed in Texas. And I don't know what your viewpoint on that.
That's a hot ass mess. Crazy as hell. I'm sorry. How you gonna tell me what we can and can't teach? And it was because of y'all in Texas, we got to have the Juneteenth. Nah, I got to withhold the information.
And the scary part is that Texas has such a huge impact on the rest of the country's education, because we're such a huge textbook purchasing market and curriculum purchasing market. So what we purchase and what we invest in directly affects the rest of the country. And
that's true.
And the fact that they might as well they need to stop sugarcoating it and say what they want to say. They are erasing real, honest history of people of color from the classroom. They're making it impossible. They're making it illegal to teach it, to teach accurate history, because they don't want a student to feel guilty for the actions of their ancestors, which, like Tennille said, what about our kids of color? What about our kids of color? Because they
I
have
want to see.
they've been feeling undervalued forever.
I'm curious to see when the new history books come out, what are they going to say about the United States Capitol insurrection?
Oh, do you know there was already a law that was
Well, she
passed?
said, don't talk about it. I
No,
want to know what they going
I said that's not even gonna be in there. That's gonna be
Not.
just washed under the
because
bridge.
in the most cases, we in the background, we sitting there talking about this ain't us. You ain't gonna be able to strike that from the history books. Come on.
They're gonna try.
They have
History book.
already.
This
At
is
least
what
in the
I
state-
really feel like that needs to happen. Every teacher of color in Texas needs to do a national campaign. And, you know what? I refuse to abide by this law. I will not teach lies.
Yep.
Everyone needs to say, I want to know what is the consequences. If you break the law, what are you going to do? I want to know.
I mean,
What are
it's
you gonna
they're
do?
strategic. What they're doing is they're. Go ahead, Tennille.
No, I'm echoing you. I just said, yeah. I mean, they still need teachers. So what are they going to do if they don't have teachers?
Well, that's what they're doing. It's a strategy. They're going to strategically remove teachers, not just teachers of color, because it's not just teachers of color. I know a lot of social studies teachers that are white that do their very best to teach accurate Black history. So they do everything in their power to teach it as accurately as possible. And you know, they're trying to get them out of the classroom. They want to dictate.
First thing y'all need to do is stop electing these officials. I got these Aunt Mamas and these Uncle Daddies in the office.
Yep. Well, I mean,
Mamas and Uncle Daddies.
I mean, the same governor, you know, the governor who basically made critical race theory illegal is the same governor who made abortion illegal in Texas. There was a new abortion law that was just passed. And so they are strategically erasing the rights of as many people as they can. That's what they're doing. And it doesn't surprise me at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there it is. Y'all got some things going on down there, but see that what's going to end up happening is that's going to set a precedence. What we don't want, because what we don't want to happen, presidents of other states. So it just needs, it's a wake up call, because we cannot, we just cannot erase that type of history from our history books or limit voices, because of, it was what it was. It is what it is. And the thing is, we either need to address it and talk about it and learn from it, or we ain't got time to sugarcoat it.
But see, Anthony, the issue is a lot of people are not as vocal down here. I'm just gonna name the elephant in the room. They're not as vocal. Now we can sit here and talk about it, us and all that. But when we go out and then we start talking amongst in schools, okay, how do you feel about this? They get real quiet. I've seen it. It has happened to me. When I talk about why don't we represent HBCUs in these classrooms? Why don't you have the pendants on the wall? I go take it, and then I'm there by myself. Everybody else is crickets.
So, without the numbers. But I was thinking back to what Mr. Elliott said about the power of community schools, about taking back. We had so much more power when we lived in that community, where our kids were in that community, where you had every income level was in that same group and we could support each other. I feel like the education was better for our kids. So
I agree. I mean,
you can still incorporate those community schools today. Those laws haven't changed, and no funding is there for that. If you don't like, something, I'm taking my child out, we're going to get Miss Jenkins. She's a retired school teacher. We're going to use this abandoned, not abandoned, we're going to use this church basement right here. And this is where we're gonna get the curriculum from the school, and my child's gonna go here with maybe 5 or 6 others.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So what are your thoughts on like charter schools versus community schools? I know here it's like 10 to 12 schools opening every year, and they all have the same purpose. I'm here for the black and brown kids. I'm here for this. And then when they open, the proof is in the pudding. I'm just saying, you know, you don't see that. And then with this new law passed, how you gonna dance around that? If you're
Lower
so
public school attendance, less federal funding, and less money, and white teachers is going to be affected by that. Because
Explain.
is white teachers going to be? Come on now, they might be invited to the cookout, but they're going to be invited to the community school. Hence the term community school.
Got it.
Right. Keep your raisin potato salad over there.
And the only reason why they come is only because they feel like, oh, I'm gonna go into the community to help. Oh, I got like they feel like, oh, I'm gonna go into the community help. And then the moment they done with they helping, they going right back to where they come from. Whoever they is, I don't care who that they could be anybody. But the fact is, they feel as though I feel like, oh, I have to go in and help. And then I done did my part. I done did my community service. Now I'm going back out here in the hills. I'm going back up the street, or I'm going back up to the where I'm from, and I ain't got to be bothered with y'all.
And who asked for your help?
I said,
Didn't ask for your help.
I said that's where they can defend, say, I've taught those kind of kids, I've done that kind of stuff. But also you can remember, like, the loan forgiveness and all that other stuff comes, you have to be in the low income schools to get that.
Yep, Title I.
Wow, I really wasn't expecting nobody to speak on that part, and that's one thing that really upsets me, because it's like you here for your 4 years and then you gone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna sip my tea on that one.
And I mean, for me anyway, at least in the area of liberal arts, I can't speak for math and science. Like I don't teach that. I've known that's not my background. But for at least the area of liberal arts, if you're coming in from a very limited background anyway, you're not helping anybody. All you're doing is spreading ignorance. And so, like, you know, they're just perpetuating the problem. So it's not, you're not helping anybody. They're just doing it for themselves to get their loans forgiven. They try to survive their 5 years in a tough school district. And naturally, you know, it's considered what? It's almost always a district where there's majority black and brown kids. That's why it's a tough school district or low income. And it's, I don't know, it's pitiful. The whole system needs to be overhauled, completely overhauled. You know, I mean, we've all heard that they say that education is one of the only institutions that has undergone very little changes in the past 100 years, right? Which is true. But if we think about education 100 years ago, right? I mean, there's a huge problem there, right? Like this inherent racism. Schools were segregated back then, and even then, I don't know. Part of me wonders: were the black kids in the segregated schools getting more of a true history than our kids are today?
I don't think they were getting history at all. I mean, and that's you know, I'm not, you know, I'm just saying, I don't think they were. And Tennille can vouch for it. I was teaching in Mississippi. I'm not gonna name the school because I don't want to embarrass them like that. But I was teaching all except for like probably like three black kids. They was learning Black history every day. So I don't understand why they're, you know, we have to come down to this law, and then you have to, you know, dance around to not be able to teach something that, you know, everybody should learn. You know, I'm not excusing what happened in the past. If you don't know what your past was, how you gonna know how to get to your future? And
that's the thing. They don't want you to know how to get to your future. Now the thing is, some laws are meant to be broken.
That one probably
and
will
if I was in Texas, that will be a law that I will openly and I will flaunt it. Like I will look. I will definitely tell them I have no intentions of following this law. In fact, I'm going to see to it that I break it every single day I go into work. Even if the subject is Irish American history, I'm going to find a way to make sure I teach some real African American history just so I could break it every single day and go live breaking it every single day.
Wow. Well, I'm not knocking it because I know if I was in the classroom, I would. I mean, if some of my teachers, not my teachers, some of my scholars watch this on the replay, they'll tell you, like, I was that teacher. God forgive me. This show Rosewood. A rookie mistake. I know. But I had parent letters. But I showed Rosewood and the kids was ticked the whole day, but they wasn't getting it. They wasn't getting it reading it in the book. They didn't get it.
They're not, yeah. It's like when you talk about Tulsa. I talked about Tulsa with my kids, and man, oh man. But I would always, here's the thing, I always swore them to secrecy. And I hate to say that, but I had to, especially when I was teaching advanced kids, because a majority of them were white kids. You know, there's another great flaw in the system. But teaching them about, you know, certain things, I would teach them about lynchings and so on and so forth. And I would always tell them, look, if you go home and you tell your parents that I'm teaching you this, you can, but know that they're going to complain and that I might not be here next week. You know, like if you want to continue to have me as a teacher, you just can't, you can't go around telling people what I teach you in here.
Now listen, real quick, I had to go get me some snacks because y'all spilling all the tea. Y'all telling us I had to go get me some popcorn, and with my tea, y'all giving it. I had to, oh, this is getting good. Now it's getting real juicy. I had to go get me a snack. I'm like, oh my God, y'all telling it. But it's real. It's real.
Oh, it's real.
We got to start being real with these students and real with our parents about what has happened in our society, and stop sugarcoating, because you know a lot of folks are still blindsided by that whole Tulsa thing. Like, yeah, okay, all people just died. No, they didn't just die. Or they'd be quick to say, "Oh, well, no, it was slavery." No, we were enslaved. We were happy as what we were good. 400 plus years ago, we were good.
Mm-hmm.
We were enslaved. Different conversation. Come on.
Different. And so we have to look at what we want our kids to know. Like, I mean, we have such a push for critical thinking and preparing them for their real life coming forward, preparing them for college, preparing them to live as adults. But if you sugarcoat everything and they've lived under a rock this whole time, when they come out, what are they going to be able? What conversations are they going to be able to have? What are they going to be able to do? How productive are they going to be? As I said earlier in the broadcast, I've been a parent and a teacher simultaneously my whole career. So every time I'm in the classroom, I'm wearing both hats. What do I want my child to learn? What do I want them to say to my child? And I have to look at, I'm preparing you for a world. And my thing is, God, if we are not educating these people, God, we're putting them in, they're going to be elected officials and things like that. Are you kidding me? I don't want you in charge of my money, my anything. You don't know anything. Like, why would I do that?
Watching over me at a nursing home and you're not.
I was like, you don't. I said, man, I mean, it's just unreal. It's like when you parents say this, I was like, we're not, nobody's going out there like arming your kid with, weapons and whatever, but they need to know. If we want them to be able to think critically, we have to give them real issues. And my thing about it is, I don't care from a 5-year-old to an 18-year-old. They read you like a book. When you are not being real with them, they know they know it. They know it instinctively, and that makes them distrust you. As a teacher, you have to be real with them. What do we want our kids to know? Period. How are we going to prepare them to be the adults we need them to be in the next coming forward?
Well, first to me, they have to stop sugarcoating everything. Like, I mean, and kids know, when I was in the classroom, it was always kids, even kids that didn't belong in there. And I just felt they needed love, so they was in there. But one of the things I remember teaching, and it's so God, I hope they don't watch this replay. But I had to teach because I'm dark skinned. I had to break them down to that. And I split the classroom up because I had to teach them colorism because it was getting out of hand with the fights.
Mm-hmm.
And so that lesson, and they hated me that whole 2 days. But I'm like, teachers can't teach like that these days. You be in trouble, under the jail. Somebody done reported you and that kind of stuff. But
John Lewis said sometimes you got to get into some good trouble.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Get into some good trouble.
And as a social studies teacher, you got to be quick on your toes and on your feet, and especially with the current events.
I'm glad you said that because that law, another thing that law is doing, the critical race theory law, is it's making it to where social studies teachers, it doesn't say that they can't talk about current events, but it says that they have to be very limited and careful about how they talk about current events. So they're really trying to take out even current events because, when January 6th happened, the insurrection, naturally any teacher who was worth a damn said something about it in the classroom, not just history teachers, but English teacher, any teacher. And so they didn't like that happened. They didn't like that those conversations were happening. And that naturally, because it happened so close to the Black Lives Matter protests, right? The kids had footage. You could compare it. Okay, so let's look at these Black Lives Matter protests and let's see how many police were there and let's see how those protesters were treated. And then let's look at what happened at the Capitol. Where were the police then? How were they treated? How are they being treated even now with legal action?
Any day I wanted to teach social studies again.
Oh, yeah. And I told my students, I said, what do y'all think? I'm sorry, I said, what do you guys think would happen if the faces of those people were dark? If that had happened at the Capitol and the faces of those people were dark-skinned people, how many people do you think would have lived? I said, there would have been murders. The police would have shot and killed people, but not a single thing happened. That was allowed to go on.
If they burned down 10 city blocks in Philadelphia because of one family, imagine what they would have did if blacks had stormed the Capitol.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Man, it would have been, they probably would have dropped napalm. It would have been airstrikes.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I guess to me, how can we continue to allow this education?
That's why it has to be taught, because if you don't teach these things, how are kids going to know? How are they going to know? I don't know. Sorry, I got excited. But no, I'm they have to know what happened. You have to know your history because, otherwise you look at stuff like it's brand new. No, this has been going on for years. And now you're saying that, people act like racism doesn't exist anymore. And I'm well, racism was made illegal, but you know what? Going 65 and a 50 is illegal too, and people still do it. So I'm no, you can't. Racism has not been erased, and whitewashing the history is not going to get rid of that dark spot on American history. It's not going to get rid of that. It's not going to change what actually happened.
That's true.
I feel like it's not going to change until our government looks like our country. The reason things are not changing or it feels like we're going backwards is because if you look at least, I don't know about y'all's state government, but if you look at the Texas state government and you look at the United States government, majority of them are white males. And that's always been that way. It's always been that way. This country was built for white males. And so the fact that they're still the majority leading, none of us can be surprised that they're doing everything they can in their power to preserve their own legacy and to coddle their own conscience so them or their grandkids don't have to actually think about history and deal with those things. But our government just needs to look more like our country. That's the problem.
Why would you want to change if you're the hero of the story? I'm sorry, Mr. Elliott, go ahead.
Yeah, but you know what? It's about that time for us to make a change. Listen, it's a whole new day. It's a whole new day now. And so it's about that time for us to really, and I'm glad. That's why we're talking earlier about the whole idea of getting more of our students of color to be educators and to be able to come out here and tell this story, because now they got a story that they live. Like many of us have had. I mean, we can teach certain things, but some things we can teach because we lived it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be able to tell some things because they lived it. They can talk. They can teach the pandemic and talk about what this was like, whether they were living, whether they were living in a level of poverty or trauma or challenges or privilege or whatever the case may be. They lived it, and it's gonna change the conversation. It's gonna make it hit differently. Many of them were in college. When we had that one professor who was like, when I first had a white man speak about the civil rights movement, I'm like, what do he know about the civil rights movement? He don't know until he started telling me about how he walked with King. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. He was one of the few white people who was out there, and like, oh, his lesson, his passion, everything it hit differently because he lived it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember. But go ahead, Mr. Elliott.
I think in my city it's much worse because at least you know what you're fighting against. Here it's so well hidden. For instance, maybe 2016, 2017, I used to bring different HBCU recruiters to the high schools. And this one high school in the Jewish part of town, this counselor was telling Black kids that they should go to CCAC and become CNAs. And when I looked at their transcript, many of them qualified for some type of scholarship at one of our nation's HBCUs. Now, I'm not afraid to talk truth to anybody. This is what happened when I confronted him. Vets caused trouble at one of those at the high school. We don't want them back in here no more. So next year, they didn't tell me this to my face. They got a Black counselor to tell me this. And I told him what actually happened. And he said, now Blacks in this city want to assimilate so bad, that he said, well, they are my team, and we are on the counselor team. I got to go with what they say. So bad I want to say nigga. I'm sorry, we laugh, but hey, I still went into the high school continuously to go in there and bring HBCU recruiters. They literally said Florida A&M recruiter was not allowed in there if he was there with me. Now, to me, that's worse than a Texas law because they're doing it underhanded. At least if they're in your face, you can deal with it.
Talk about good old boys rearing their ugly head in this new modern era. We're going to get you one way or another. We're going to get you one way or another. That's what happened.
Yep.
Let me just jump in here real quick and say to all people who are watching us right now, if you're still watching us live, make sure you hit that like button, hit that share button, comment. You got a question for us or anybody on the panel right now? We would love to hear what you have to say right over there in the chat. So if you see it right now in the chat, put a question, put a comment. If we're making sense to what anything that you've heard us say here today, or if you want to say something and challenge anything that we've said today, we want to hear from you. Listen, it's all about a better chance for you future, and we can only do that when we collaborate and we work together. I think I threw a quick little shameless plug in there. And to all my replayers in the house, listen, go to the website. The link and everything is in the description, and so you can go to the newsletter and go on the e-blast. So you can get these weekly, quarterly. Monique her team does a phenomenal job putting out great content and information that helps students get to and through, helping with mentoring, with academic enrichment, with tutoring, with HBCU advice, with inspirational words, and all that and then some. So again, you'll find the link in the description, as well as hopefully she'll put it in the chat in a few moments. But if you got a question or a comment, hit the like, hit the share, let somebody know. Don't hold this to yourself. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Ram. Trying to run the backstage and run the show is definitely a challenge. And then sometimes I forget I will name that for myself because the content and Dolores coming through, Tennille coming through, Mr. Vince, and then even Anthony putting his thing in. It's like, oh God, I forgot all about the chat. I'm just gonna be honest. But seriously, like we really have some work to do. And like Mr. Elliott said, you got to be willing to get into that good trouble. And apparently I must be the queen of that. Must be the queen of good trouble. Dolores must be also. Tennille is, but she's teaching me to fight a different way. Because I can't take the Detroit or Dayton in these places. But I will hold people accountable if you're dealing with our Black and brown kids. You're not going to be one-sided. And to me, that part is what ticks me off living here in Texas. It's
Let
like
that Detroit out. Let that Detroit out.
I said, everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a thing they're supposed to be doing, and you're doing it. So we appreciate you. And I feel like every kid, especially every kid needs a champion, someone to stand up for them. We have to advocate for them.
Mm-hmm.
we do. And I see it like the first time Dolores had talked to me about this topic, I was like, oh, she passionate like me. I said, we probably get in good trouble together.
Yeah.
I mean, because to me it's necessary. I can't stand, and I used to be a school counselor. I can't stand to walk in the classroom where the teacher is yelling at the top of her lungs, this close to a face of one of our Black and brown kids. I turn instant crazy. Because to me, I was that kid. Even though my mom's classroom was around the corner, I'm going to tell the teacher off, get the whooping later. It just didn't matter at that time.
So what I've heard from a lot of parents is they said it's different when their kids are being educated by a person of color, is what I've heard them say. And I said, I have experienced it as a parent. I said, it's not that they don't love our babies. In my particular experience, I feel like I have two bright students or two bright children, but they need to be pushed. Like you just can't, I didn't send them to school for you to let them sit on the side of the wall and just take up space and breathe the air. I want you to push them the way I am pushing all the kids that are in front of me. And I do not care if you came in here reading on level, below level, above level, 3 years, whatever. I don't care. Like, I am pushing you to be better than you were when you walked in this door. And that's the love and that's the push that I want for my children. So that's what I expect educators to do for our kids, no matter what color they are. People are really good at, a lot of times they are really good at caring about, loving our kids, loving our Black and brown babies, but they are not pushing them the way they need to be pushed.
I'm glad you said that, Tennille. I am glad that you said that because 90%, and this is just facts. 90% of our kids that get in trouble, they're gifted in something. And if the teacher is not meeting that basis, the kids gonna act up every day. I have two nephews that I love. They're gifted. And when the teachers get it, they probably won't disturb their learning environment anymore. So, I mean, that's my thing.
Hey, real quick, Monique, let me just jump in there real quick because I thought about something. If you want, listen, I'm always about the shameless plugs. You talked about your two nephews. Talk about what you did to impact and support your nephews.
Oh, Lord, Anthony, you put me on the blast. It is never about me. For my nephews, and this is so relevant for the discussion. My nephews, they love to read. And all of you are probably can attest to this. None of the books in the classroom usually look like the kids. Look at everybody's face like, yeah, that's true. So what I did is I wrote 2 books. And I flipped it like, look, you gonna read. You ain't gonna be one of them kids talking about you don't want to read. You don't like it. So I made 2 books, made myself and my nephews the character of both of those books. Because it's like, look, you gotta go come to me with a problem. I'm gonna find a solution and we gonna move on. Because you're not gonna be illiterate. Like that's not gonna happen.
Hey, show the graphic.
I don't even Anthony, I don't even know.
No, it's down there.
Oh,
It's down there.
like I didn't even know you put it in there. So yes, those are my two books. Of ABC Black History Inventions Made for Me. It's not all of them, the inventions, but it's enough to get them going. And then the other one is The Magical Cheese, and it's like an adventure book. You can get them on Amazon, but I didn't even honestly, y'all. I don't plug myself. I just do what I do. But my mentor, like, look, you gonna tell what you do, all of it. So yeah, but that was the purpose of those books, because they're like, we didn't even know you was writing. You deal with high school kids. No, my nephew's got an issue. We gonna fix it. So,
and that's all about the community. Now that's community.
Mm-hmm.
That's community, because you saw a need and you stepped in and you're part of the community. Look, how can I help impact community? Boom. I love it.
That is one thing that I totally wholeheartedly agree with. I feel like that at least when they get to high school, the English classroom is so pivotal in that area. I made sure that my classroom library had a book in there for every kid, where the character looked like them or dealt with some issues that they were dealing with. I feel like if kids can't see themselves in books, they're not going to want to read books. And so, and so many times our, really good young adult authors of color are just not exposed. Like the kids are just not exposed to this literature. They don't know it's out there. They don't know it exists. And so I made sure that I personalized my classroom library to the point to where every single kid could say that there was at least one book in there that they could identify with.
Awesome.
It's incredibly important. Yeah.
That is important.
So,
I'm so sorry, y'all, but I have to bow out.
Oh, well, we enjoyed you, and I kept looking at the clock. I'm so sorry I kept you, but it was so engaging. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Thank y'all for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you for coming.
All right, take care.
So yes, and what she said is really relevant to have the presence. And I don't know if y'all remember this book, and I probably, I broke so many laws when I first started teaching. But my kids, they wasn't getting it, and they didn't want to read. So I had them read The Coldest Winter Ever. Whoever made that.
That's my sister Soldier.
Yes. When I tell you, it ended up turning into like a behavior thing. Okay, we're not gonna read the book till we get these sentences done and we correct this grammar. The kids wouldn't put the book down. Anthony making a face. You never read it.
I don't remember that.
Oh my God. Oh God. That book is about it's about her life story, but it's really a good story. And
Word for me.
I said,
I read that, and also Sister Soldier, No Disrespect.
I read that one.
First book that I read, novel, from cover to cover, 9th grade, Iceberg Slim, Pimp. And that made me want to pick up another one and another one.
Yeah, she does a good thing, but I think the issue is we don't have people that are scared to teach out of the box. We don't have administrators that are brave enough to lead outside the box. I do know that there is a school here about to open soon. That might be the one person that will do it. I'm not gonna mention his name because I don't have permission to, but I know he's watching because he's been texting. But he's from Detroit, and I think he's gonna be the one to do it. I really do.
I know we have different people, different parents and educators listening. They mentioned books for the high school level. I wanted to mention Marie Bradbury's More Than Anything Else book. I read that every year to my 3rd graders at the beginning of our reading unit, because that book really focused on the value of learning to read, the value of getting an education, and I just wanted us to all start at the same place. So I just want to put a plug in for that. Was one of my favorite books to share with my younger students.
That's awesome. And I don't want anybody to get in their feelings as they're watching the replay. We just try to help. We are trying to help. We're trying to restore education. And we just stating facts. I put the articles in the link. You can see where we got our facts from, and we're just discussing. Because I know sometimes people see stuff on social media, or they might watch the replay, and they're like, you disagree with it. Challenge. Let's talk like adults about it. Come to the table. I'm willing to have a discussion with you. But we do have to get out of here. We've been on longer than I normally hold, folks, because the discussion was really good today. So I do thank my guests, Ms. Dolores, especially Mr. Anthony Brown jumping in, to Neil and Mr. Vince. Like, I really, and what's funny is all of us are from different spaces. Like, Anthony's in Ohio. Mr. Elliott is in Pittsburgh, because I showed him my Steelers mug earlier. He thought I was playing. I told him I was a Steelers fan. And to Neil, who is here, but what you say?
Anthony, don't start. Don't start.
I already told you earlier.
Don't start.
Oh,
I already told you what the birds won't do.
I can't. Always a fun time when we have our impromptu shows like we've had the last two. This one, the Education Matters, and our last one, which dealt with Pride Month. So I do totally appreciate you all giving me your Thursday. I know we could talk for hours about the issues in education and injustice, which really, like, we were only supposed to be on 30 minutes, but it doesn't matter because, I run this. We can talk as long as we want.
You sure can.
But that, to me, to bring out some of the elephants in the room, I think y'all are brave, because, like I said, you show up to the board meeting, everybody, it's like mom's the word. So when are people going to step up and talk? So, I mean, that's my question of the day. When are you going to step up and talk? When are you going to back your other, and this is principals too, naming that. When are you going to back your Black teachers in the building to let them do what they know how to do? Or have you gotten so far you can't say anything? Just saying. Anything like, somebody done made my friend mad today. I mean, because it's a fact, friend. It's a fact. It's a fact, and I guess that's probably why I didn't, don't make it in certain areas, because I'm too blunt. And I'm going to call you on your stuff.
You blunt? No, say it ain't so.
Unfortunately, it depends on what the issue is. I do become very protective, especially when it comes to the miseducation of our kids.
Hey, I have a question for you. The other Black teachers that have issues of you promoting HBCUs and actual Black history, are they HBCU educated?
Are you talking about where I am? No, they're not. Majority of them are not. And a lot of the exposure, honestly, didn't happen till I start, you have a day where you wear your college shirt every Friday. And you already know me. I told you I got 1,000 Wilberforce shirts, 1,000 HBCU shirts, but it didn't just end there. I also have my pennants that I kept. You see the ones behind me, and you can't see the ones that's on the wall. Can't turn the computer around. But I've always kept my pennants, because what they need to know is that those institutions were founded for us because we couldn't go anywhere else. Not founded because we just want to have a Black school. It was founded because we couldn't go anywhere else. And if you go, anywhere in any HBCU out of the 106, I might be off, because I know we got 2 more.
I always you say by saying 100 plus, because you didn't
100 plus.
Given day.
Okay. They live. I was counting Morris Brown already. But anyway, you go to any of those schools, any of the illustrious institutions. If you become a freshman, you are going to take a history of that university, and then you'll know the relevancy. And I got so disgusted in talking about HBCUs to somebody, because all they could tell me, that's a party school. I said, yeah, I partied. I ain't gonna lie. Thank God there weren't no camera phones. I did. But I also got a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of self-esteem, a wealth of knowing who I am, a wealth of determination, and a wealth of drive, that you can take a person who barely graduated high school, that is on their way to getting their doctorate with honors.
But it's okay for Ohio State people to tip over cars in the middle of the street. We never did nothing like that. It's okay for Florida State students to rip down lamp posts in the middle of the street. But we never did nothing like that.
I think what it comes down to is that just what is the point of education? And I think it wouldn't be such a contentious bill. They wouldn't even, if education was not a true weapon, if it was not a true weapon in where we are going, where our future is at, then they wouldn't even bother taking a day to discuss it. They wouldn't bother making paper go back and forth between the Senate and the House to make this bill pass. At the end of the day, it's like this is a weapon that they're honing and trying to make it go one way. And in order to protect our children, we have to arm them with knowledge. We have to arm them with what they need. And you know, I agree, like the bill is whatever, but we are still educators. We are still parents. We have to teach the kids. We have to arm them with the knowledge so they know what they're going into next.
Well, Tennille, I know y'all like, we said we was ending this show an hour ago. No, I'm just saying. But I do want to ask this question because it always come up. It always, when I do a presentation about HBCUs or I do a presentation about HBCUs, parents automatically tell me this. And I know Anthony and Vince probably had this posed to them. But the parents always tell me, well, I don't want them to just be in a area where there's just Black people. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We got like 10 HBCUs that don't even look like, if you go to some of them, they don't even look like it's an HBCU. So what are you talking about? Have you done your research, your homework? You just have your opinion. And
based
I mean,
on no facts.
Say that, friend.
As we were talking about, I guess, in what we'll call the pre-show, I mean, there is something validating about being around successful people that look like you, that you can relate to, that you can see yourself in them. And the beauty of it is it's reciprocated because they see themselves in you. And you can't replicate that. You can't manufacture that any other way. Like it has to be authentic. So I was like, I saw a change in like I said, I grew up military, and then my children have moved around a lot because, you know, our family's military, and like there's definitely a difference when my kids can relate to the people that are educating them. I see them light up. I see something switch in them and that drive happen. And I'm not saying their other teachers didn't care about them, but I'm saying my children connected in a whole new way that changed education for them that particular year that they had that teacher.
And that's true. Hey, I'm sorry, y'all. I get excited when I talk about this subject. And like, I ain't never seen her this radical. Yes, I'm a rebel rouser. When you play with my kids and you play with my HBCUs, yes, it's a serious situation.
Right, because y'all went to a whole other topic. I'm like, okay, I'm here for it, though. I feel like I'm here for it. Let's go. But I ain't going to hold you.
The racism in this city educational system is just as bad as the racism on the police force, if not worse. I mean, we have white people over Black populated after school programs. I mean, we can't even get a hold of our kids after school. A lot of the nonprofit educational based programs is ran by white people in this city.
Wow. Well, is it because a lot of us don't have access to the funds, or we're not willing to go out and try to find how to get it? Because I know me,
it's definitely we don't have access to it.
Okay.
You definitely do not have access to it.
Because I am a researcher. I like to learn. I like to go look and find stuff. And I come and show, hey, Tennille, you know about this college? Like, I do that. You know, but a lot of us, just being real honest, you know what grandma and them used to say. If you want to hide something from somebody that look like us, hide it in the book. That's on my grandma. She used to literally say that. 100
in most cases, you will be 100% right. But in this case, in this environment, they
Mhm.
keep changing the chapters of the book.
Well, I don't think they changed the chapters of the book. I think like how we talked before we went live today, they keep trying to change the finish line, because if you think mediocre, and we can use your analogy, like you said, the gymnast that just did something nobody can do, you set the
That's
bar.
exactly what I'm talking about. As soon as we get to where they tell us to get, well, now
The
it's
finish
here.
line.
Now it's here.
I don't think people realize that's how standardized testing works too.
facts.
I don't think people realize that that's standardized testing. Once they get to where the kids are doing real good, then they flip the script again. And we have to do, that's happening this year too. They're changing up the testing. So I said,
We got work to do. What is it? We got work to do.
we do.
I mean, I feel it, and I get so discouraged when I go into schools, or when I have to talk to kids, or when I have to talk to parents. Even, and we didn't touch on it today, I might bring y'all back again, and we can touch on special education laws
Part
and
two.
things like that. Maybe have to do a part two.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Anthony face that's a whole different, because our parents don't show up ready for the meeting. If you speaking in a language that the parent have never heard, they already intimidated when they come into the meeting. You dressed up, you got your suit on. You might be dealing with Pookie and Ray Ray mom at that time. So she's gonna shut down. And then you're talking to her in a language and she just signing the paper and she don't even know what she's reading.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got to do a part two.
That sounds like a plan.
Because that kind of stuff bothers me for our Black and brown babies. That mom, she coming in there already. She don't want to be there. 1, 2, she probably working 2 or 3 jobs, so she had to separate her time. So it's a lot of issues in there. And then that's what hinders a lot of our kids. They special needs, and then they think they can't get into college. All you have to do is tell them, and your stuff follows you there. Our parents don't know that. So yeah, we might have to do a part 2. Anthony like, oh my God, this is the most I heard her talk.
Yeah, I ain't never seen you talk this much. I'm like, I'm just gonna be quiet and you do your thing.
Yes, I am passionate about education. So yes, we definitely will do.
Woo!
I can't with you. We we definitely will do a part 2. I have to call up some of my friends that are big on special education so they can state facts. But for real, this time we are gonna get out of here. I know I held y'all long, but the discussion was just so engaging. If you are watching on a like, on a share, or the replay, or I said that backwards. If you're watching on the replay, like, share, comment, and then that way we can address your concerns. Dolores is still watching and she's texting me if you have them for her as well. I think we had a great discussion, guys, on our impromptu ones. So thank you to Neil, who is our Director of Education for ABCU Futures Incorporated, Mr. Elliott, Mr. HBCU, and Mr. Anthony H. Brown. Mr. President is what we call him. I call him mentor, but I'm glad he hopped on because he gave wealth of knowledge too. So I want everyone, you're like, what is she about to ask us to do? I want everyone to pose a challenge for our replayers or our current people to do something for education this summer. So pose a challenge to them. What do you want to see them make an impact on? I guess if I was to go, I would say I want to see an impact on literacy for our Black and brown kids that are 4 to 5 years old. Why? Because that foundation you lay is important. How you start is how you finish. So that's mine.
I would piggyback on that. I'm ELA through and through. So English, reading, writing is my passion. I would piggyback on that with writing. A lot of kids are intimidated by writing, especially our Black and brown babies. Writing is about organizing your thoughts. Challenge your children, or any children you have in contact with, challenge them to organize an argument and back it up. Teach them to organize their thoughts. If they can say it, they can write it.
Thank you, ma'am.
This summer, I challenge Any parent, when you take your family on vacation, if you are in a vicinity of any HBCU, take your children on a tour. That's my challenge, Mo.
How can anybody top that? Like, I would have thought.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm speechless now. So listen, I would probably want to say, I would challenge anyone who's watching or on the replay to do what you can to impact and to inspire young people to be better than themselves. I mean, so often I used to be guilty of trying to tell young people to don't be like me, but be better than me. But that was a false impression of people thinking, well, this person they're trying to be better than may not be all that, but they can always be better than themselves. So always helping young people understand how they can reinvent, how they can re-engage, how they can reconnect and to recommit to something that they want to do and what they want to be. So be that guide on the side and really help students understand they can be the best person they can be. So that's my challenge to everyone watching.
And on that note, I just want to say I appreciate everyone. Catch us on the replay. You leave comments, we will reply. And we will see you again. Yes, summer is in, so you will probably see a lot of shows. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for our special guest. And we'll see you on Sunday.